Hi everybody, this is a short case study for the Biomechanics Academy. The format that I'm using here, which is PowerPoint with a video commentary overlay, is going to be the format for our courses moving forward in 2023. We will also be doing some group courses at different venues, and also you can book one-on-one training with me at the clinic. The first online course that we're going to be doing is sacroiliac joint and pelvis, morphology, dysfunction assessment and treatment. There's 11 modules to this, so you can take your time as you move through them. There's tons of research behind all the comments on the slides, and I'll give you a list of all the research references. It goes from basic to quite advanced biomechanics and interventions, so that should be quite interesting. If you don't know pelvis and sacroiliac joints, this is the course for you, because it will take you through each stage at a very whatever pace you want to go at, basically, but it's going to be really good. You really need to understand pelvis and sacroiliac joint if you're doing biomechanics. If you don't, you are missing a lot, and a lot of dysfunction that affects the rest of the kinetic chain. So back to the case study that I've got here. It's just 5 slides, so it's going to be quite short, but this is a case of a leg length discrepancy that is functional in origin. And as you can see from the pelvis here, it's dropped to the right. I'll come back to that in a second. It's a 58-year-old male who presented with bilateral foot pain, and he's pretty miserable because he's sedentary in his work. He wants to be active at the weekend. He's put on weight because he's not been able to be active. This is a slow progressive condition for the obvious reasons. And he has bilateral ankle impingement and medial column collapse. He does have other aches and pains in his body, but these are his main concerns. So actually, if I just go back to that slide and put a laser marker on here, you'll see that the pelvis has dropped in the frontal plane, so there's a pelvic obliquity here. The iliac crest has dropped, and so is the sacral base. So if you just look at the posture in his spine here, because the 5th lumbar vertebrae sits on the sacral base on that plate, it's going to throw everything out. And normally a scoliosis, a functional scoliosis, goes to the short side, so in this case to the right. Now that may correct with some kind of intervention. If it's been there a long time, sometimes it can't be corrected, but I would imagine in this case it could. But I would not use a heel raise on this right side at this stage. Now if after a few more months of treatment we can't lift that right side, you would consider putting a small raise even on a functional difference, but it's not the preferred route. So this image here I've got on the left is a recent photograph of his feet, and you can see the complete collapse of those medial arches there. So this is adaptation over a long period of time. I use the word adaptation a lot. I don't like the word compensation, because for me it just doesn't make sense in biomechanics. Adaptation, we've adapted over millions of years in lots of different ways within the body, physiologically, anatomically. So adaptation is a much more apt word when you're talking about musculoskeletal situations. So there's lots of long-term changes here, probably because of a forefoot Aquinas and forefoot varus. I've drawn 2 horizontal lines on the malleoli here. So if you did a navicular drop test, you would find that that right side is about 5 or 6 mil shorter than the left, and this is why he has the pelvic obliquity. So whatever happens at a lower level in the feet and legs often has an effect on pelvis and further up the kinetic chain. And there's lots of different scenarios I can talk about in the education that we'll be providing. But I would say generally over a period of years this guy's probably lost about 1 centimetre in height, if not more. Not only because the ankles and the feet have dropped, but also because of the knock-on effect further up the kinetic chain at pelvis and spine. I mean, this chap had a hyperkyphosis and a hypercervical lordosis, and that would drop height. So he would have dropped at least 1 centimetre, and maybe as much as 2 or 3. I do see that. This is a scan on the right I took about a year ago, and you can see the asymmetry in posture, you can see the asymmetry in pressure. At that point, we used a very mild controlling orthotic, because if you'd have used a rigid material or a rigid orthotic or a high control orthotic, this chap would have rejected it and he would never have used orthotics, and we would have been missing a great intervention to help him. So after 12 months of using something mild, we've used something a bit more significant, and I'll come to that in a second. I've drawn on here the subtalar joint axis, which is medially deviated and low. I've also drawn with the red arrow his body mass and the weight over each limb would fall medial to that axis line, which would exacerbate the pronation moments. It would create abduction of the foot, collapse of the medial arch, but also a bilateral delayed heel lift. So over many years his Achilles tendons have overstretched. And again, I'll explain to you how you can intervene with that on the orthotics in a second. But this would create an increase per step of the pressure time integral, and it would just exacerbate this condition over many years. The scan, which is more recent, September 22, you can see further changes there. So really it's time to kind of intervene with some orthoses, which we did a few weeks back. And this is what we made. So these are the orthoses that we recommended for him, which he finds comfortable. You can see that he's worn them, he likes them, he's ordered a second set here. And this is quite interesting, because if I'd have used this type of orthotic right from the word go, he would have rejected them. Now I've used 3mm polypropylene because it flexes in the arch. You're not going to correct this foot. You're not going to bring back a beautiful arch. What you're going to do is damage limitation, and the most important thing for you and this client is to get rid of the pain. So this product has worked. It's not worked 100%, but it's improved his life massively. So I've used this 3mm polypropylene and ground off the arch slightly and put a pour-on D-pad on top of the arch after 3mm pour-on. And that's so that as the orthotic pushes up in a vertical direction across the medial side of his foot, he would find it tolerable. I've also put plenty of pour-on, which is a closed cell rubber memory foam, which is really good. But under the arch here, I've used a big, thick, flat bed of pour-on as an arch fill. And that's so as he walks and puts pressure on that orthotic shell, it would flex into that bed of pour-on and decelerate him. The secret in this case is not to block the movement, but to decelerate the movement. I only used 4 degrees of rear foot varus because, again, if you try and put lots of control, because your first instinct will be to, right, I'm really going to control this foot, you would probably make him worse. And especially if you used a hard material like carbon fibre and a shiny top, all he would do is slide off it. He would have increased pronation moments because of the orthotic, and you would make him worse. The other feature here, I've put a bilateral 4mm heel raise on both sides. So why would I do that when I said I wouldn't put a heel raise on the right short side? One, because it's functional, but I use the bilateral 4mm raises because he has delayed heel lift. So the more that foot is on the ground, the more that he has this ground reaction force, and the more pressure time integral he has per step, the more pronation he has and the more pain he has. So if I can just encourage his feet to get off the ground that little bit faster with these bilateral raises, and then you've got the orthosis there controlling the pronation, and he increases his cadence so he takes more steps per minute, you will reduce the pain per step. In this type of situation, somebody who's tall like this, that has this long step, like this long gait because he's tall and he wants to get places, so he opens his stride length up, it just makes him worse. So I would encourage him to swing his arm, stay upright, shorten his step length, put these orthotics in, try and get the heels off the ground faster, and you would have an increase in improved function and reduction in pain. And that's exactly what's happened in this case. So I review this guy every 6 months, and this type of situation, you wouldn't find it would be a smooth journey for you as a practitioner. There would be changes in prescription slightly, there'll be changes in material potentially, and even if things went well, you would find with a case like this, you would be changing something at least every couple of years. Hope you enjoyed that. If you have any comments you want to make, or how you would approach this case differently, I'd be delighted to hear. Put them in the comments below, and I will put more stuff up like this in the future. Thanks very much for watching.